Okay, students, we're back. We had our first meeting in school. Now, you guys know this is the pandemic, and they finally let us go in for one day with just a few students. And because of social distancing, I had scheduled 10, but I only had 8 students come in for that class. But at least they got to do some hands-on. One thing that I found out and that I see, because it's extremely difficult to be teaching online on things that you have to do hands-on. The details, the areas that you have to cover become more. But I did find that some students still had not gone beyond the first haircut. And nothing against those students, there's different levels of learning. Some people can't pick it up on what would be just the laptop itself. And, you know, I had a hard time learning all this stuff. If I hadn't been doing hair for 52 years like I have, I don't know that I'd be where I am right now. It takes time, it takes learning every little detail and many of the whys. Why does that happen? So one of the things that I want to do today, I want to review this first haircut that you students did. I want to make sure you understand it. So before we get into the haircut, I'm going to review the head form. All right, and let me move this over so hopefully the camera can catch it real good. Okay, so remember, in order to diagram, and you have to diagram all your haircuts, you're supposed to send those in. And what I'm going to start doing when we start meeting on Tuesdays, you're going to have to bring those diagrams in for the haircuts. So it's up to you and what you want to do with this. I realize you're teenagers. I realize that working from home is extremely difficult, but remember, it's just as difficult for a teacher to be able to give it to you when so often we've taken for granted of being right there with you. All right, I'll never do that again. I'll never take that for granted again. So what I want to cover with you is, let's go over the head form again. So we have a question mark, and then a number 1 and a number 2. And we put the ears right here because of the tragus. The tragus is right there. Now, I'm not going to write them all because it's just going to take time. T-R-A-G-U-S, tragus. Okay, and then we have the parietal line. The parietal line is the curve of the head. That's where that sits. And just underneath the parietal line is the lower ridge. Some people call that whole area, this whole area right here that I'm getting ready to describe, the rim. Well, I can tell you to take it to the rim on the lower area, and the rim for you would be a variety of lines, but we have a specific, and I'm going to cover it again with the mannequin. But there's a specific area where you see that fade line coming off the side of the head. That's the lower ridge. That's because the head then starts curving forward, curving upward. So the upper ridge is above the parietal line. So then you have the parietal line, you have the upper ridge, and the lower ridge. Then we have, normally that's called the temporal area. But in teaching these classes, I teach it as the flat part of the head. It's flat. There is no doubt about it. That's flat. Okay, put your hand right there. It's flat. You can put your whole palm. It isn't until you're able to curve your hand around that you can see that that becomes rounded in the back. Okay, you have an area called the frontal fringe or bang. Now I'm going to draw a front of a face here. Okay, there's your parietal line. And give her some ears. Because of the tragus, it's a point of measure. The tragus is a point of measure. That's why it's important. That's where you would, if you're going to be doing sideburns, the areas of the ear are all points of measure for you. So, all right. So, this area on the very top of the head is called the apex. We have the apex. That's the top of the head. That's the highest part of your head, is the apex. And it's actually shaped about like a goose egg. It's very oval-like and elongated a little bit. Well, in front of that is your frontal fringe or bang. Now, the mistake that people make on doing bangs or cutting bangs is they cut them straight across. In other words, they're going to section straight across like this, and then they wonder why they have those little short hairs flopping out. You're always supposed to slightly pie shape it, and then whatever direction you're going to do it. There's a variety of ways to cut bangs, by the way. But that is the frontal fringe or bang. Then we have our crown. And now the crown crosses into, or over into, slightly into the apex, slightly into the upper ridge, and slightly into the very center of the back. And let me see, I'm going to put that down here because I want to make sure that you're able to see it. This is the back of the head. Again, the parietal line, apex, upper ridge, lower ridge. All right? So the back of the head, this right here is the occipital. That is where the majority of the hair is. Just slightly at the center, right at that area, slightly above the parietal line, is the vertex. If you know exactly where the vertex is at, and I'm going to show you in a minute on the mannequin. See, the problem is this has no hair on it. The mannequin is full of hair. So it's hard for you to determine or decipher where it's at. So the vertex is right at that center. Then we have our nape line. Again, the nape line is easy to find. Place your finger here. Don't direct it, just slide it back. Don't direct it, don't direct it. It's going to go back by itself. And the very center of that is your knowledge bone. It'll end up right in the middle of your knowledge bone. That's how you learn to do a tapered haircut for some of the older gentlemen, or some of those haircuts that you see, guys that have longer cuts but it's shorter at the nape. Well, that's how you determine exactly where to go. We call it a happy face. In the midst of that, however, in the middle of that, we have an area here and an area here. Those two are so important. That looks like eyeballs, doesn't it? I could put like a little happy face on that if I wanted to for the neck. But anyways, it's not. I'm going to take that off because I don't want it to be a deterrent. But, okay, that area there is called behind the ear. Simple as that. Why do you suppose that's important? So often you'll see a guy with really short hair, and that on one side it grows up, on the other side it grows down. These two areas are extremely important because of that, because of the direction of growth. And sometimes people want, and this is where you tell them, it's not me, this is the way your hair grows. We can make it look as close as what you want, where if you do a cut that's straight across, you blow dry it, they go home, and then they do it, and if this side is growing up and the other one down, it's going to look uneven for them. And they're going to think you cut it wrong, and you didn't. This is where you need to speak to your client about it. The rest of it, the hairline is called a perimeter line. The hair inside is called the interior. So we have the parietal line, flat part of the head. It's called the temporal area normally. We have the nape. We have the occipital, we have the crown, upper ridge, lower ridge, apex, frontal, vertex, tragus, all of those. And then the perimeter line and the interior. Learn those topics. You have a graph that I sent you. So learn where you're at so that when I talk to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't do it, you're only putting yourself in jeopardy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about a video that we saw, and you learned how to hold a shear. You learned how to hold a shear. Primary, secondary, extended. I'm sorry, primary, secondary, extended. All right, so this is the primary position. This is also a position that's called palm to palm, by the way. If you go to a class or something and they say cut it palm to palm, that's what they're talking about, palm to palm. All right, so primary, and remember, palm and primary sound the same. Primary position, secondary position, extended. And you'll use the extended position occasionally. So when we watched this video, one of the things that I mentioned to you was she's holding the shear in a primary position, which is this position. What ends up happening is it's going to make it flip out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of this head and I'm going to hold it in that primary position to cut. And what you're gonna see, and I'm gonna travel around the head. This is just the 0 again. We're cleaning this one up. I'm gonna travel around the head, still holding it in that form. And travel around the head, holding it in that form. Now, as you can see, it scatters a little bit, and the more you do it, the more it's going to pop out. If I take it, now the rest of the cut, I'm going to cut it in the secondary position. Now this hair is slightly damp, it's not totally dry, secondary position. Remember the other one was primary, or palm to palm. So I'm going to cut it in the secondary position, and you'll notice, I hope my head is straight, because the head needs to be straight for the line to be straight. And I don't think it is. There you go. All right, so I'll hold it in the secondary position. And I want you to see, I'm sorry if you can't see it because of my elbow, but you can see that I'm holding it in the secondary position. Look at that hard line. Look at the softer line. What ends up happening, you're holding it straight down. You see the scattered? See the hard line. You can see the difference in both. Now on that video, they did it with the primary position, therefore bending the hair out. When you bend the hair out, let me erase this, I'm going to take it off. When you bend the hair out in that form, let's say this is a hair shaft. You're gonna, if you bend it out, you're gonna cut it at a slight angle. Shorter moves longer. Shorter hair, make that move up. When you hold it straight down and cut it in the secondary position, you cut a hard straight line on it, therefore creating that weightiness as opposed to the lighter cut. That is why it's not recommended that you cut it palm to palm and turn the hair to do it, because there's no way you can do it. You have to do it the other way to create that nice weightiness that they may want. Those are the two variables in it. This is something that I wanted to show you for that. Now, when we sectioned this, we brought it, now see, there's the nape line. Here's the parietal line. How do you find the parietal line? You take two combs. I'm going to bring it all the way down. So I'm trying to hold it there so that it does what it's supposed to do. Oh, hang on a minute. I got to stand behind it to do it. My head is still just a little bit off, isn't it? There you go. See, when I'm teaching this, it makes it just a little more difficult. All right, so you see that? See that right there? I'm going to put my finger right there where it's at. That's your parietal line. That's how you find it. It is that corner right there. You could even just, as long as they both meet, there it is. So know that that is how you find your parietal line. The other way that you find it, the hair is growing and then all of a sudden it starts growing down. That is your parietal line, where the hair drops right there. So there's factors. Now, the reason I say there's a definite specific on knowing where the lower ridge is at, the lower ridge is where the comb leaves the head, right there. The upper ridge is where the comb leaves the head, right there. So you have your parietal line, upper ridge, lower ridge. This makes it exact. You have an exact place that you're going to look at to cut the hair or trim it, whatever you're going to do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and quickly run through this cut and just blow dry this for you. And what I'm going to do with the rest of it, I'm just going to cut it in the secondary position. I happen to like that look a lot better than doing it with the primary position for the zero elevation. All right, turn it around, do the other side. I love these spray bottles. Anymore, you can find them all over the place, but they're not cheap. That's the only thing. Now, I'm not certain that it's absolutely straight because my mannequin was turned a little bit. But this hair is just slightly damp. So there's my guide. Again, I'm following the head form. This is flat using the secondary position. Okay, I feel like this is slightly shorter than the back, but right now I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to clean that up in a little bit. Now I'm going to take this, separate it in half, tip of the ear, slightly above the tip of the ear, to slightly above the tip of the ear on the other side. Let it fall down on its natural fall. Put this up. So this cut, once you know the steps, and the next step, and the next step, and the next step, and that's why you diagram it. It's to learn those steps. Now, in talking to a student yesterday, as she was combing the hair down, and like I said, it's different levels of learning. I would be exactly like her as far as trying to do it online, to find out every little detail. You use your index finger and your middle finger. You bring the hair down. See, I'm combing the hair down with both of them. And I place my thumb there to press it, to give it a little bit of tension. If I don't, it's a little looser. This way, see, my finger isn't going to open up. The thumb is pressing down on it. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to place my fingers right there, place my thumb, bring it straight down. All right? Now, if you can't see your guide, you've got too much hair. Now, I can see my guide right there. Now, I'm at the center. I want to make sure I'm right at the center. Like I said, I'm trying to teach, so it's a little different. And I'm going to take it straight across. With the secondary position, I'm going to travel around the head. Again, using my two fingers, my index finger and my middle finger. And travel around the head. Now, I've already cut that side. And then I'm going to do the other side. Now, this time, always center to front or front to back. Never going all the way across one way or the other. You'll always end up with one side a little longer than the other. Now, the other way, I was cutting towards my fingers. Now I'm cutting towards my fingers, but moving away on the other side. So, got this, and you'll see that line harden up just a bit. This line is already hard because of the, let's see, I'm going to just clean up that little corner there. I have another little corner here because the head had shifted a bit. There it is. Okay. Now I'm going to drop the rest of it, and I'm probably going to run out of hair. Very little to cut. Very little. Nothing. Again, it's already layered. I just cleaned it up a bit. And now you can see that little bit of a harder line on this side where I folded it up towards me as opposed to the other. But it's just a much nicer, much cleaner line to create that look. So keep in mind, see, I'm at the parietal line. This is the apex. This is the center top where you can put a book. If I put the comb there, the apex is where again the head leaves. Let me wet this down so I can show you exactly where the apex is at. The apex is surrounded by the upper ridge throughout the entire head. The top of it anyways. That surrounds the apex. The frontal area touches the apex. The tip of it does. Oh, I erased that. But the tip of the frontal area touches the apex. And I want to show that to you. This is her frontal area. So if I take this up, see, there's the apex. See it? Comb leaves the head right there. that's the apex, that's the frontal area. Frontal area is always, when you're going to do a bang, you always want to take it and do a triangle part. I know this isn't very clean, but you want to do a triangle part so that it comes from the parietal line, tip of the apex, to parietal line on the other side, and straight across at the frontal area. Now, there's a variety of frontal areas. Not everybody has a rounded one. Some of them have a widow's peak. All of those things, some of them have cowlicks up in this area. All of those are factors as far as what do we decide to do with this hair. And some people grow in one direction. You've always got one side of your head growing forward and the other side growing back. Some of it may grow forward and down. Some of it may grow just forward. Those are factors as far as when you're making decisions on what you're going to do with a haircut. Let me tighten this up, get her nice and straight, I hope. But as you can see, I have just a few little strands, a few little strings to cut. Now, another thing that they did on the video, the way they brought the sides back. Okay, they take them and comb them back in this form, and then they bring it down. Okay, when that happens, you're going to create an extreme corner in the front. If you take it and just comb it in its natural fall, you see what I'm saying? But yet hold it in this form. Now this side, I'm going to comb it in this natural fall for you to see it. And I'm holding it because it is the side, so my fingers are pointing forward. And these are just slight variables in hair cutting. Okay, so I just matched it to the side, again using secondary position. This side, I'm going to comb it back like they said. And what you're going to see, let me wet this really good, and then I'll just stand on the other side for you to see me cut it, because I want you to see that I'm going to pull it over. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pull it over, just like they recommended on the video, and then bring it down. Okay, there's my area to cut. And I'm just going to cut it right there. But this is what I want you to see, what ends up happening. Whereas if you just comb it down, cut it across, now what we've got, and you can already see it, an extreme corner and extreme length coming from this side because we moved it over. When hair travels, it becomes longer. You can see that this lays a little nicer. It's up to you and what you want and what the client wants, all right? But when we move it over in that form and bring it straight down to match, we're going to have that little fray of hair, that little bit of hair right there coming down. And what's amazing in the video, what they did, I'm not sure if they, I don't recall, but I believe that they cut that corner off. So in other words, why didn't we just do that? So that we have it. Another comb. Just drop my comb. You never reuse a comb. Once you drop it, sanitize it, clean it like you have a brand new client. And actually we're pretty even. I think we're a little longer on this side. And that's just because my mannequin was off a bit. But otherwise we've just cleaned up her ends a bit. I'll clean the rest of it up a little bit later. How much time do I have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. So one thing that I want you to notice, and if you have one side that's longer than the other, where you're going to find it is right here in this nape corner. Right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift her head to the side and I'm going to bring it straight down right there at that nape corner. And you can see that and sometimes it's amazing what an ever so slight variable does. Secondary position again. Bring this over. this over. And look at the hair that I'm taking off. I mean, it's just right at where it was a little bit longer. Travel back, make sure that we're okay there. And you know, the main thing is know where you're at to know where you're going. Okay, just a little cleanup right there to blend. And clients aren't really, unless the hair lays back perfectly, they're not going to see it. Other people might see it when they put their head down. Yep, we're back to even again. And one way that you can check to see if you're even is just pull it out. See, we're even. So that corner was still in the same spot. Still at that corner at the nape. Because we start and turn. And when you turn, many times your angle tends to change a little bit. So when that angle changes, it becomes a little bit more. Now, all I want you that have not finished cutting your mannequins, please just cut 1 inch. Do it 3 times. Follow the procedure. What's the next step? What's the next step? After a while, they don't become steps. They just become common knowledge. You know how to do it. All right? So just do the best that you can with it. We will be checking them on Tuesdays. If you haven't got it finished, you're going to finish it. So now you've got a better idea. We've reviewed the head form. You know the different parts of the head. Parietal line, apex, upper ridge, vertex, occipital, crown. You can put your hand on top of the crown. All right, flat part of the head, nape, perimeter line, interior. It's all of it. Crown right there. I think I've already said the crown. So, and then you've got your frontal area here. Remember, it's at the tip of the apex to parietal line and parietal line. And that what that does, do you see these hairs back here? If I take those hairs off and cut them short, that's where that's going to be flipping out. That's your why. The head is round, so you have to take it at an angle so that you don't have those little hairs flipping out. And how far back you determine to take it is also another factor. If they want a light bang, you're still going to take it at the parietal line, but your angle is going to be further up towards the front. It almost looks like it's straight across, but it's not. This is more narrow. You see what I'm saying? Very skinny there, wider at the center. And then you've got, still yet, a decent bang. And there's a variety of ways to cut it. We've gone through and look at the other videos for bang trims. We've gone through and shown you how to do that. We want to keep as much length on top as we can because, I mean, you don't want it this long. You know, I mean, 4 inches on top is going to be good by the time you get done with all the cuts, because you still need to do the V cut, which is bringing everything forward. You still need to do your A line, which is bringing everything back to one spot, and then the 180, and then we remove the corner, then we ride the parietal line, then we clean up the nape, and that's the last haircut. But you get to see it, and all of that hair becomes shorter, becomes more manageable. All right? Thank you very much. See you on the next one.